Hello and welcome back to the podcast. Today you have a solo episode from me all around whether your higher or your not self is creating your reality. So things we know for sure, you are creating your reality. Your thoughts, your behavior, your actions, your beliefs, the way that you perceive the world and the way that you perceive yourself is creating your reality. This is Manifestation 101. And what we have come to know for sure is that how you see yourself especially, is going to dictate whether you move forward in an aligned way or whether you move forward in your conditioned logic. And let's just say that when you are moving and operating and believing, like actually being the thoughts of your not self, your conditioned self, we'll say your lower self, you're going to have a small life. You're going to have a conditioned life. You're going to have a life of dissatisfaction. You may be able to get a certain amount of success, but it's going to feel hard. It's going to feel draining. It's going to feel unfulfilling. And that's because it's not aligned for you. And the universe will always attempt to redirect you and will try to guide you on your highest path. And that's usually through challenge, because when else will we change? If things just kind of flow forward, we won't change and we won't have the evolutionary karmic path that you came here for. And then you'll just have to come back around and do it all again. That to me does not sound like fun, to just have to redo it all again. I want to come back and have my elevated evolutionary path. I hope I come back. They say that if you say you don't want to come back, you definitely have a lot more lives. But I want to come back. This is heaven on earth. I had a deep, deep ceremony a couple of years ago where it just showed me that this is heaven. This reality, pleasure, desire, enjoyment of life, like almost a hedonistic life. This is what we have here. And in different galaxies, different frequencies, we don't have that. It's just your frequency. And so we have the gift of the human experience right now, and we get to choose what we make of it. And I just want to remind you how precious that is. I just want to remind you how powerful you are as a creator of your own reality and how you came here with an evolutionary journey to move through to become more free, to remember your divinity, to become more love, because that is your true nature. That is who you are, that limitless, abundant life force, creative energy. And so do you realize how important that is? Do you realize how powerful that is? Do you realize how free you actually are? And any thought or story that tells you different is an illusion. It is something you are here to transcend. It is something that you are here to wake up from. And that is the deconditioning journey in human design, which Ra would say with a 7 year. I'm now in my 8th year, and I can definitely say I definitely felt a shift after the 7 year. I remember when I first heard about that, I rolled my eyes a little bit and thought, no, I can get there quicker. And yes, absolutely. It's your timeline, your journey. But I do think there is something about the whole frequency change and cellular change that happens in your deconditioning period over 7 years. And this is, by the way, from when you first find out about your human design and the freedom that comes from that. Now, all of it is awareness. Human design is just at its core is an awareness tool. And what I love, if not the most around it, is the understanding of when you are in your not self, when you are in your lower frequency, your lower expression, as I call it within the certification, and realizing that rather than having these unconscious beliefs and thoughts creating your reality. Now, at the time of this recording, it is the eclipse season, and I love eclipses. I love retrogrades. I thrive in them because I see the gift that they bring. I see that they bring the challenges and blind spots to the forefront so that you can change them. What a gift and what an opportunity that what was once hidden or what was once we were maybe ignoring, it wasn't just hidden, we were purposely ignoring, becomes so obvious that we have to change it. What a gift. Because I would rather know, I would rather have awareness and conscious thought rather than it unconsciously creating my life. Because things we know for sure, science has proven this, is that your subconscious runs 99% of your life and creates 99% of your life. So you may as well be aware of any of the illusions or any of the false stories of not enoughness, of lack, of fear that is creating your reality. Because your mind is creating evidence to support these limitations, and we then go as far to defend them. And when we have awareness of, hey, this is my lower self, this is my not self, this is not actually who I truly am. And where it is dangerous is when we so defend and believe our stories. Now, I have gate 39, which is the gate of provocation in human design. And as a projector, I can see deeply into others. I can see their blind spots. I can see where they're, it's my job to be able to help them see themselves clearer and to see where they are limiting themselves. And so it's very interesting where I will reflect that back to someone because I can see where they're in their stories. It's definitely one of my gifts of I can just cut through all the illusion and all the narratives and be able to clearly see what is the belief that is creating their suffering and the story that is creating their suffering. And so I have found it very interesting in the past where people can be defending their story and who'll be like, no, that's just how it is, or that's how I have to have it. And it's important for us to reflect on where you defend your own stories and say, you just don't get it. Or staying in this victim consciousness and like protecting the identity that we've created around our not self. And let me just remind you that your not self benefits other people. When you self-sacrifice, when you people please, when you try and prove yourself, it benefits those around you because they become the beneficiary of you abandoning yourself, of you overgiving, of you overworking, of you not staying true to yourself and just saying yes to them. And so we want to remember that it's going to make you uncomfortable at first as well when you start to realize where you're operating as your not self. And it can also make other people change, and you changing can also bring up stuff for them. And that's okay. We want to be so loving and compassionate to them as well, but even more loving and compassionate to yourself. And it's always in the communication. It's always in the love. And so we spoke last week about how to actually timeline shop. And if you haven't listened to last week's podcast, you definitely need to. It was a really good one. Must listen, if you ask me. And we spoke about understanding that life is always giving you an opportunity to shift timelines and to become even more free and in your true nature of love and abundance, because then you receive all that you give out. And today I want to speak about the awareness of when you're operating in your true higher self energy, which I would argue is love, compassion, intuition, knowing, abundance, anything possible, full infinite potentiality, because that's the characteristics of nature of the divine and of nature and of God, which we are, which you are. You are the same life force energy that is running through trees, animals, ocean, weather, other people. The same energy that opens a flower is the same energy running through you. The same energy that was moving through Einstein and Steve Jobs and Beyonce and Rihanna. I feel like I really age myself when I say Beyonce and Rihanna, but I just feel like the easy people that people see as magnetic is running through you. And the only difference is that they have different stories around what is possible for them and have different stories around what their limitations are and whether they see that they have something to give and offer and their true power and divinity. And they're also extremely authentic and they're on their mission in this lifetime. And you can feel it because, as you know, we're all energy readers. Now, what human design does, and today I'm going to be moving through the energy centers because it really helps us with the awareness of when we are in our not self lower frequency. Now, our frequency and our energy creates our life. Our thoughts create our life. Our beliefs create our life. And we have been hearing this for decades and decades. But what we didn't have was tools. What we didn't have was actual tools in the day-to-day of being able to catch ourselves, catch the unconscious thought that is based on our conditioning, i.e., I'm not enough, or let's use I don't know enough, or people don't like me, or people won't like this, that then dictates how we show up in the world. If you have that belief, you will keep yourself small. You will not do the thing that you want to do. You will worry about how it's going to be received. So you do a tapered down, watered down version of it, which doesn't have the same hit or energy that would actually really land for the people that's meant for what you have to give. And so when we have an awareness around when we are in our lower not self, we then have the power to shift and change and come to our truest higher self energy. I just want to remind you that this is something that you will do for the rest of your time here. This is the process of being a human, and it's the awareness. And they say that it's, different onion layers, different layers of deconditioning and releasing and coming back to your true self. Now, I like to think of it, it's that when you have this releasing, unbecoming, and noticing and realizing that underneath it all is your true self. And your true self is undefinable, by the way. You're not going to be able to give labels or to be able to write in a sentence or speak in a sentence of who you are. And I see this a lot. Like people are hard on themselves, or even the spiritual community is, you need to know who you are. Let's just say any of the things that come after who are you that are any form of a label or a role aren't even you anyway, or anything other than divine love or I am full stop is actually who you are. So anything that is a role or a title or a job, it doesn't hit. I love the I Ching where it says that if you're trying to explain the Tao, you are no longer talking about the Tao, where Tao is God. So you are undefinable. You cannot be conforming to one story or one role or an identity. That will become irrelevant, especially as we're moving into the new paradigm where your energy does the talking. Your frequency is creating your life, your beliefs. What will mean whether you step into your higher, truer self or whether you stay in the limited stories of the not self. And now I just want to remind you, and I'm just feeling so cool to say this lately, just because I have been noticing it. If you are in any form of judgment, even as a spiritual being, you are in your lower self frequency. If you are in any form of I'm above or they're below, or any form of I'm right, they're wrong, that is no longer spiritual. And that's why I'm so passionate about the way that I share human design, because it needs to be empowering. It needs to not be any form of right or wrong, because that is not truth. Right or wrong is not truth. There is all the color in between. And it is really just about transforming darkness to lightness, fear into freedom, judgment into love, negativity into positivity. And in that is the transformation. In that, you timeline shift. In that, you're in your highest power and your highest evolution. So I'm firstly going to define the difference between the not self and the true self. The signature self is what it's called in human design. But the higher self is not always perfect, is not doing everything right, is not some righteous energy. It is who you are at your core. It's your true self. And that is from love and compassion, intuitive knowing, trust in self and trust in what is possible, is connected and is one with divine loving energy. From that place, yeah, you're very forgiving, not only of others, but of yourself. And you're in witness mode. It is this energy of being in witness of what is, and then redirecting your energy into loving compassion, knowing, and expansion. So the higher self is honest. The higher self will call you up on your own bullshit, or just notice where you are acting in a way that is out of alignment or truth for you. And again, in such radical love, which can be, yeah, it's not in any way negative or harsh, but it's truth. And so we need to practice that with ourselves, because remember, in any way that we are acting in lack, fear, judgment, control, especially control, is anti-evolutionary. Control is anti-evolutionary. Judgment is anti-evolutionary. And that is when you're in your not self, your lower self expression. Even if you feel like you're doing the right thing, if it's coming from control and lack, it's the energy of your not self. So it's just going to create more outcomes from the not self energy, more of what you don't want. Whereas what you do want is coming from the higher self, truth, love, abundance. And I'm going to get really tangible here, because I know sometimes that can feel a little bit hard to grasp for the logical, rational mind. So we're going to go through all the energy centers. So that is your higher self. It's a frequency, it's an energy. And that's where you can tap into your body and feel, does this come from expansion? Does this come from love? And if it's not, then it's going to be in your lower self frequency. Now, again, awareness, it's going to happen. But if you feel that constriction, that judgment, that fear, that lack, that comparison, the control, you're in your lower self, even if you think you're right, even if you think it's for the better, even if you think whatever, it's in your lower frequency, and it's going to create more lower outcomes, and it's going to keep you on lower timelines. I tell you that right now. It's going to keep you on a lower timeline. And I see it. I see it with very quote unquote spiritual beings who, yeah, judging. And the thing is, even if you're very self-aware and spiritual, if there is judgment, that keeps you on a lower timeline. And so just see when that thought or that voice comes up, How can I shift and transform that and free that rather than figuring it out and solving it from that lower mind? That's not the point. It's freeing yourself from the lower thought and just catching it. So this is where I was speaking about it last week, catching and not allowing an unconscious thought or judgment go past and then create a whole problem. That's the thing. We think that life is presenting us problems. No, your mind is creating problems. There are no problems. And that's what this practice does, is that when you are shifting from your lower expression into your highest expression, it actually dissolves your problems. You realize that you don't have any problems, or they actually solve themselves. And so this whole idea that you have problems to fix or solve is your lower frequency. And when you are being given the opportunity in every moment, when you catch yourself, when you see yourself in the lower frequency of trying to prove yourself, or feeling like you are separate, or feeling like you're not keeping up, or feeling like you're not enough, or feeling like you don't possess what is needed in order to create what you desire. If you're ever feeling envious, if you're ever feeling constriction, if you're ever feeling like you have to do something, or you're feeling like victim, really victim consciousness, this is your beautiful opportunity to transform this energy and come back into your higher self. And that is the timeline shift. That is the transformation. That is the evolution. And that happens in the everyday. So every day you're being given the opportunity. And so nothing's by accident, by the way. Every single thought is not even by accident. Like, where do these thoughts come from? They come from an initiating energy that is trying to transform you and evolve you in this moment. And so even when you get a thought of lack, wow, great. What an opportunity to transform this and come back to my truth of abundance and knowing and love and possibility. And in that, you shift and change into timelines. So to me, the not self, to define the not self, it is anything that comes from the belief that I am separate from love, that I am separate from life force, that I'm separate from the universe, that I am separate from abundance. Because from there is all this limiting and illusionary stories of I'm not enough, that's not possible, people are out to get me, people can't be trusted, you can't do what you love and make money, whatever. Like all the thoughts, all the stories that come from this lack of belief in knowing that you are universal energy and anything is possible from that place. And you are the love you seek, and you are the fulfillment you seek, and that you are the abundance that you seek. So to ground it as an example, let's say you're not self or lower self frequency, and I can definitely say that I've experienced this a lot in my past, is trying to feel like you have to prove yourself, or that everything has to be hard. That's another one. That's what's coming more to me. Let's start with the proving yourself. I got to prove myself in order to be loved and worthy. When you realize that if I'm not separate from life force energy, I got nothing to prove, and all I can do is just trust my intuition, trust my interest, do what I'm good at, do what I love, and all that I give will come back to me. And watch the money come in, watch the people come in, and watch the love and fulfillment you'll feel in your body. The other example of everything has to be hard, you will then create the experience of everything has to be hard. You will choose hard things. You will not do things that are natural because it won't even be in your awareness. You won't even allow things to be easy because you'll create problems and create struggles because you have a story of things have to be hard. And I remember it stopped me from creating my business for a long time because I saw how hard my dad worked and, sometimes wasn't present in the family just because he was working so hard to provide. And look, when he was super present, but then also as well, when he wasn't, he was gone. And so it's a really beautiful understanding that I had of, wow, I can actually be successful and still be present in my life and be present to the people in my life. And that working hard is not equal to how successful I can be. It's about your impact, your energy, and what you have to give and what your mission is. And it's actually got nothing to do with how hard it has to be. The hard is actually in the expansion, not how many hours you work. It's, are you trusting the intuitive nudges? Are you doing what you were born here to do? Are you following and trusting the opportunities and the invites to expand in some way and moving through the discomfort? And that becomes your motivating factor rather than it being this self-fulfilling prophecy of struggle. And so when I notice, when I am in that lower self energy of, yeah, like things are almost a little too easy. Like I had a period there where, and this is just such an anxious thought, things are going too well. It's all going to fall apart. Everything's going to blow up and I'm going to lose everything. And it was very interesting for me to witness that in myself and say, oh, that is a lower self thought. That's my not self. That is my not self having some form of idea that I could even lose something. You can't lose a part of you. You can't lose your true nature of love, abundance, and divine intelligence. So if I have nothing to lose, then I can take risks and know that, yes, money can come and go if that is part of my evolutionary journey, but I will never be without, because I can't be without, because I am part of the life force that is moving through all. And you hear this about successful people. They're not afraid to lose things because they know that they can make it straight back just as easy. And so your life story, the stories that you subscribe to, will create your reality. And I am not available for any limiting story. I'm not available for it. I can witness it, but I'm not available to feed the energy for it. And this is what my friend Maddie reflected back to me, that it was one of the things that hit her the most, that I kind of said as a off-fly statement. Someone was talking about something and really, again, we can defend our stories. And it was a story around, I'm in the in-between and I can't really move forward because I've got one foot in one and one foot in the other. And I'm in this in-between. And I was just, she's my friend, so we can talk like this. I was like, I'm not available for that narrative of the in-between anymore. Like, I'm just not available. I'm available for the narrative of I'm in my expansion, I'm in my growth, but I'm not even available for this story that I'm in the in-between, because that is not an empowering thought. Being in the in-between says that basically you're in limbo. It says that you aren't in power. It says that you're having to wait for something. When my belief is that, yeah, you're in your expansion. There's going to be discomfort. There's going to be a lot of uncertainty, which is what we would say is in the in-between. But I choose to see it as my expansion. So based on that story, I'm going to try things out. I'm going to move forward. I'm going to feel good in that state rather than thinking that I'm ever waiting for something. Because if you feel like you're waiting for something, like, that is not an empowered state to be in. And Tony Robbins says, change your story, change your life. Change your story, change your state, change your life. And so I feel it. If I'm in a funky state, if I'm in my lower not self energy, I shift and change that energy. It becomes my full-time job, not in a way that I'm bypassing, but it's just like, okay, what is this inviting from me? What is coming up for me right now? I know deep down in my truth, and this is from my years in my human design experiment, what I can see is I can witness myself when I'm in my story. I can witness myself when I'm in the doubt. And I can know, and it's like I can have this foundational knowing that I'm divine life force energy, as you are. But right now I'm having a very human experience of disbelief in that. I'm having a very human experience of not believing in what is possible, my truth, or having some moment of fear of my own expansion right now. So let's think of a pyramid. I have the foundation of I am divine life force energy. I am universal energy. That is your prana. That is the energy moving through your body. That is divine. That is such a gift for you to have that energy moving through you. Do you know how many other spiritual energies would love to have the prana moving through a human body right now? That you can create things, that you can manifest things, that you can do things on this material world while being a spiritual being. So think of that as the base of the pyramid. And then the next step above it is, okay, I have my parts that I can witness. I have my parts that, can have these very, again, human experience of doubt or disbelief or fear or lack, and just witness it. And then change your state and change your frequency. So then the energy of it all is, okay, how can I get back into the true self energy of my life force? And that's always not going to be this intellectual place. I think a lot of us, and this is again with talk therapy or even sometimes IFS parts work, it's not meant to be this heady thing where you're having to make sense of things. No, you're just changing the energy around this thought. You're changing the energy around this belief. So then it totally transforms the way you see yourself and you perceive the world. And so that is going to then change your experience here. So when you can feel that lower self frequency, when you can feel, because again, every thought has a frequency. So when you can witness it and capture it and come back to the foundational knowing, and that's what the tool I shared with you last week, use the power practice, pause, create space between the illusionary thought, the illusionary story, and that true self knowing higher self energy. So let's think about that lower not self has its own thoughts and beliefs, that it's not enough, that it has to compare, that it is behind, that is not loved, all of those illusionary thoughts that we want to give love to because that is the lower self's reality, but we don't want to dwell and stay in there. We witness it and we come back to the higher self energy. And so back to the power practice, pause, witness, take a moment, create space from your story. It's like when I was in so deep in my conditioning, so deep in my autopilot, so deep in all my disorders and all my control and all my, just suffering. It was because I was attached and I was my thoughts. I was blended with these fearful lack parts. I didn't realize that that wasn't who I truly was. I believed my illusions. I was my illusions until I started my human design experiment and I realized that they weren't actual true, that they were just stories, that I had just picked them up along the way, that I had some evolutionary path and I came here, like my soul chose to come here to have a journey of self-love. My soul came here to have a journey of self-acceptance. And in doing that, that's what I teach to others. I teach others self-acceptance, self-love, and then creation energy from that place, because that's what I had to go through. From so much self-hatred, eating disorders, controlling everything, so much isolation, depression, anxiety, all of it. Because I believed my illusions, I believed my thoughts. And then I was at that lower frequency. I was my not self. Until I realized and I had the awareness and I realized that I had an opportunity to transcend them. And everyone has that opportunity, and let this podcast be your opportunity. So O in the power acronym, O, what is this opportunity inviting from you? What is the evolutionary initiation coming? Why is this showing up into your story? And that's, as I said, if things aren't coming into your life and things aren't happening and you're doing all the work, I really just would ask you and invite you, where are you operating from this lower self energy? Where are you judging? Where are you keeping yourself small? Where are you living in lack? Where are you living in your stories? Where are you defending your stories? Where are you in your fear? Or where are you in your ego, thinking you're better than other people or thinking that you're worse than other people? Because that will stop your timeline shifting and you just get the same energy back, even if you're doing all the quote unquote right things. Then back to the acronym W, witness the parts in the stories that are fearful. Give them love. You don't have to go into their story. You don't have to revisit everything because again, that's just recreating the same energy. Give that part love, give awareness, see what that part wants you to know. And then through that, you're reframing it in empowered ways. But make sure you reframe it into an empowered ways, not continue to feed the story of you are a victim. And I see this, especially with parts work. Don't just stay in the victim of the part. And yes, we can become aware of it, but how can we shift and reframe the story that that part operates from? Then E, embody your true self. Connect with your body, your intuition. This is how you start to shift from your lower frequency, lower not self into your higher true self. So in the E, you're embodying what is the most expansive response in this moment? What is the most expansive thought? How can I shift and reframe and change this negative story or this illusionary story? And then we come to R, respond as your higher self. What would your higher self do in this moment? And move forward in that way. That right there is a timeline shift. That right there is your true evolution. That right there is you becoming your higher self, who is who you truly are. That right there is like healing karmic collective wounds or anything that you came here to do. It happens in the everyday. It's not just saved for ceremony. That is in the everyday. So today I'm going to be moving through now about some awareness of where you can be in your lower self-expression using human design, and then the invitation to come back to your higher self frequency. So just as a reminder, this awareness, just having the awareness will change the game, will change everything, because then you can shift it. Then even just with the catching it is going to do half the job. Catching the thought, catching the self-limiting belief. So let me just remind you that your highest, truest self, your signature self, is so forgiving, is so loving, would never be hard on you when you're even in your not self. So none of this is to shame. None of this is to say that you're doing anything wrong. It's just you're being human, but now you're being invited to be a more elevated, expanded version of you. So there's no judgment, no righteousness. And really, when you're in your truest self energy, you see the God and you see the divine in everyone. You love everyone. And so You're also very devotional in what is important for you. You're very devotional to your practice, to your life, to what you love, and you move towards your intuitive knowing. Like even your higher self can be like that little intuitive niggling, that intuitive curiosity. That's your higher self speaking to you. So let me just remind you that your lowest self and your highest self will create very different timelines. We spoke about parallel timelines in previous podcasts. So we have lots of parallel timelines. And based on how you're operating, whether you're in your lowest self or your highest self, will create which timeline you're in. And sometimes you need a bit of tough love and noticing when you're in your stories and in your victimhood. And the beautiful thing is that in every moment you have an opportunity to change a timeline, even if you've been in your lower self energy for the past 20 years. You right now have an opportunity to be in your highest self right now. So then with the awareness comes a choice. You have a choice to come into your highest expression right now. So with this awareness that I'm about to share with you, this is how you come into your truest self, your higher timeline. And this is where you just naturally align and connect with your manifestations. As I said, if you're operating in fear and lack and ego, it keeps you in a lower state, a lower frequency. You can get places, but it's going to be a lot more of a harder slog. So this is where I like to gamify the process. This is where I get so motivated and excited when a not self voice or thought comes up, because I'm like, cool, I'm being given an invitation to go even deeper in my practice and also be able to shift and change a timeline right now. And it's in no way are you searching for it. Again, I think it can be a bit of the spiritual ego to always need to be in process with something, always looking for something to fix. That is your not self. Always looking for something to fix and always needing to have a process. I've seen this before in people where it's like a good sign if they're in process with something or they're always looking for something. No, you don't always have to look for something. There's not always something to fix. Please, please don't do that to yourself. So you can notice when you're in the low level energy where you feel that pull and you want to gossip or you want to be right or you need to say the final word. You know, this is what the Kabbalah speaks about when we get these short-term hits of gratification or these short-term feelings of light. It's like, I just need to prove to them in this moment, or I just need to make sure they know that they're wrong. It might feel good for a second, but you're actually feeding more of the energy of your lower self, of your not self. And that's not what we want to be feeding. That's not what we want to be feeding because you're just creating more of the lower self frequency and energy. No, breathe through that. Resist the feeling of needing to compare. Resist the feeling of wanting to gossip or put someone else's work down. You're going to suffer from that. You're basically inhibiting your own growth by doing that. So just know that discomfort and self-doubt and resistance and fear will be a part of your highest self-expression. You're being invited, you're being initiated. And so it's giving you the option to shift your state and rise in that moment. When you have the discomfort and the mental resistance, that's part of your expansion. All we need to be is just 1% better than the day before. So remember, you're being given an opportunity, and part of being in your highest expression is that you're going to feel fear. That's okay. It's not that you are just always perfect and always light and love in your higher self. No, if you're in your expansive higher self, you're going to be met with, your boundaries. You're going to be expanding beyond your comfort zone. So that's going to bring up some fear in the body and some mental resistance because that's just part of being the human. So amazing. Welcome it and then move through it. Rise through it. Just don't focus on these small problems or these small stories and things, because if you do, you will have a small life. So always asking yourself, what would my highest self, my highest expression do right now? And just know that there will be resistance because that's what growth is. It's not always going to feel easy. Release the idea that it's always going to feel easy. Okay. So let's get into the human design centers awareness. Now we speak about this within the certification, obviously a lot deeper, but you have within your chart different centers. These are your shapes within the chart. Whether they are defined or undefined is going to be, if you have a colored center, it's going to be defined. If it's white, it's undefined. Now I'm going to be talking about it just as centers as a whole. It does have a deeper meaning, whether it's defined or undefined, but save that for another day. Jump into the certification because we go so much deeper in there. Obviously, we have 6 months together. But for now, with this, I'm going to be sharing what can be really powerful and transformative right now in your life. So let's start with the root center. The root center is your bottom center, the little square. Now, the not self energy of this center is feeling like you are always in a rush, feeling like you take on everyone else's stress and you're busy for busy sake. And there is this pressure to always do things quickly, and you can get really overwhelmed with not taking action. Or the opposite can be a lot of procrastination because it all just feels so overwhelming. And this is where people are in this perpetual fight or flight state and feeling like they are always behind. And I'm actually going to bring in the sacral here because the sacral also gives us awareness around this of feeling like you have to keep up with the rest of the world. You have to feel like, you got to keep up with everyone else's pace. So this can be workaholism and always being busy and ignoring any signals to rest and working to the point of sheer exhaustion and burnout. This is also lacking boundaries around work, fearing rest, fearing about saying no, not listening to your body, and leading to a life that's unfulfilled and frustrating. So when you feel this, and I just want to remind you, if you feel a lack of energy, it's because you're in your not self. You will feel a lack of energy in your not self because you're using your energy in an unaligned way. And in doing that, think of you using your energy from an empty tank. And I even believe this for manifestors, projectors, and reflectors. Those were the non-sacrals. I have a lot of energy as a projector. I also have a lot of rest, but I would say I'm a very energetic, passionate person. And I see a lot of projectors saying that, they just don't want to do anything, or that they don't have any desire, or that they just want to always rest. And I truly believe it's just because they're in their not self and because they're either recovering from burnout. But if it's been time and they're actually just like not letting life force move through them. And I think it's from that bitterness and that not self. And it needs to be fully reconciled and moved through. And then coming back to your true life force creative energy, because that's what you are as a human. So when you are in this narrative of always being in a rush, we need to stop, pause, take a moment. What is this inviting from you? What is this opportunity to change? So when this shows up in my life, I stop, I breathe. I remind myself there's no rush. I don't take any action from rushing because that's not my true self energy. When I picture my true self, higher self, she's calm. She's grounded. She's not swayed by other people's timelines. She's not taking on other people's stress. She makes very clear and grounded decisions, and she doesn't feel the pressure from the outside world. And so when I notice when I'm in my not self lower frequency, wanting to make decisions really quickly, or when I'm coming out of pure fight or flight, when I notice there's fight or flight moving through my body, I stop. I pause. I don't take any action from fight or flight because I just know it doesn't get me anywhere. I also notice when my not self tells me I can't rest. I notice when my lower self energy says that you're going to miss out, or you're going to be left behind, or you're going to lose what you started. Or I also notice when my not self gives me lots of guilt for slowing down, for going and traveling, for what else? Go for a nap at the beach at 2 p.m., which I'm going to do right after this. And I notice where the guilt comes in, and I stop and I reframe. I come back to my truest, highest self energy, and I remind myself, hey, in order to be a channel and to be able to share and to be in your mission, you need to have a rested body. You need to be present, and you can't be present if you're burnt out. I also know that that's the whole deconditioning of a projector, of all of us. We're all deconditioning that. And so when I have that fight or flight response from the root and from the sacral, I stop, I pause, and I come back into my true self frequency of knowing that, firstly, time doesn't even exist. So why are we rushing? And knowing that I can take grounded, aligned action in my space, and also noticing where I'm spending energy just to be busy, just to be quote unquote productive, because that's not my best use of my energy. That's just satisfying my conditioned self of that you're a better person if you're busy. Notice if you use busy as a badge of honor, that is your conditioned not self, and that's creating more lower frequency. And I also notice where, and I see it in clients and people where, yeah, like you're doing things in your maybe business that aren't actually the best use of your energy. Like that can be delegated. You don't need to spend 20 hours on Canva making a workbook when you could give that easily to your VA or to, you know, grab someone on Upwork if that's where you're at in your business, or just be able to delegate it? And where are you in lack or feeling like you have to be the one that does everything in your business? That I would argue is in your not self. So noticing as well where you don't let yourself have joy or pleasure. A lot of people don't even know how to access that because they can't even remember the last time they experienced that. So we're always asking and creating space. And then you're seeing, where am I, as I've said, where am I trying to keep up, overdo, overgive, overwork? Where am I working harder, not smarter? And coming back to your higher self energy. And from an abundant place, okay, does that mean that you would change the way you operate in your business or the types of offerings you have? And I remember that was a big thing, even at first, when I started to move away from so much one-on-one and was going into more group programs. You know, my undefined sacral was telling me, no, you're really good at one-on-one. You can't change to group. Imagine if I didn't let myself and I didn't challenge that thought, because now my group spaces are so much more powerful than even the one-on-ones that I could do in 1 hour with one person. I mean, now 6 months in the certification with like-minded people that you learn through, not only through me as a teacher, but as all the other beautiful people inside of there, like so much more powerful. So just witness the thought and coming back and reframing and coming back to your true knowing, your intuitive nudges as your higher self, and coming back. So for this, for the sacral and for the root, we're thinking about the true self of establishing really healthy boundaries with work, because your higher self wouldn't be available 24/7, wouldn't, you know, override their energy and push through rest. It wouldn't constantly be stressing and running around like a chicken with your head cut off. Absolutely not. That's not your higher self energy. So even if it means you have to have uncomfortable conversations, or even if it means that you feel really uncomfortable when you don't instantly reply to someone's email, or you change your offering because you feel called to share it in a different way, breathe, allow, step into your higher expression. Okay. So then another center that we can move through is your solar plexus. So your solar plexus is your emotional center. So when we think about the not self, it's going to really depend if you have it defined or undefined. If you have it defined, we want to be seeing like when you are in your not self as a defined solar plexus, which is your emotional center, you'll see that you actively, impulsively act. You act impulsively on the highs and lows of your emotional wave without allowing time, or without noticing when you're, as I said, reactive or impulsive. If you have a divine solar plexus, you really do need to let your emotional wave move through its process and then come to clarity. Also, as well, I see the not self for the defined solar plexus is repressing your emotions, feeling shame around your emotions, attempting to control your emotions, or using them as a tool to manipulate others. So I'm a defined emotional center, is I used to see for a long time, I used to repress and believe I wasn't emotional. And it just, like, sickness happened. I felt numb. And until I started to see that, like, it's such a beautiful part of me to be an emotional being, and I don't have to create stories around it, and I don't have to hide it, and I don't have to be shameful of it, and I don't have to control it. Even just right before I recorded this, like, a wave of tears came across me. I listened to a song and I just wave crying. It started as so much gratitude. Then it went to sadness for my past self. And then it came back to gratitude, and I just let it pass. It lasted a minute and then it was past. And then I sat down here and recorded this podcast. Like, I love that about me now. I can also see where you can manipulate others with the defined solar plexus, and you got to catch yourself in that. You can't, especially to our beautiful undefined solar plexus, don't manipulate people through an emotional experience. We can feel more comfortable in the emotions, and to manipulate that with an undefined is lower self frequency. So we need to remember that you are responsible for how your emotions move through your body, and having proactive ways and allowing and not reacting and throwing it on other people and being, like, messy. Don't be messy with it. You can be messy with yourself, but don't be messy on others. That's not their experience they need to hold. Then if you have it undefined, your not self will be taking on everyone else's emotions as your own, feeling emotionally unstable because you're being tossed back and forth from other people's emotions, and feeling like you have to solve everyone and solve everything. So this means you have an open solar plexus, which is the triangle on the bottom right. Yeah, this means that you also can fear confrontation because you fear speaking up or upsetting other people because you don't want them to have a big emotional experience. So this is where for both of these, let's just plop them together for the podcast's sake. We want to be embodied and unified with our emotions. We want to have healthy expression of our emotions. We want to be compassionate, empathetic, wise around setting boundaries and supportive to ourselves. Also allowing the emotional energy to just move through us rather than become us, or rather than suppress it, or rather than creating all these stories and all these meaning around what it means about you. Like, it doesn't mean you're depressed because you had a cry this morning. Like, where did we get that far and disconnected and shameful of our own emotions that we then think that? Like, to be human, you're going to feel the full spectrum of emotions. You're going to feel sad and you're going to feel happy maybe in the space of 10 minutes. It doesn't make you bipolar. It's just if you don't know how to process it, or if you don't allow yourself to process it, that's when it can create strife in your life. That's when it can create suffering in your experience as well. Okay, so now we're going to go to the spleen center. The spleen is all around your instincts and intuition. Your lowest and your not self is really going to be about not listening or bypassing the signs from your intuition, allowing your own or other people's fears to hinder your own choices. Also, as well, I've noticed the lower and not self is going to be disconnected from your body and like dissociation. Also, as well, if you're always feeling sick, you're always unwell or battling sickness, it's often because you're ignoring your intuitive senses. So coming from this lower expression is really just like going with logic and no longer your intuition. It's ignoring your instincts. It's not trusting and believing your body and where you feel called and what feels right for you. And so this is as well where you can be living in fear and holding on to what is not good for you out of safety and security. So you might be holding on to that relationship or that job or that way of thinking, those illusions. You might even be holding on to your limiting thoughts because that's what you know. And so coming into the highest expression of the splenic center or the spleen is to trust your intuition as it presents itself by paying close attention to it. It's knowing which fears, like what are actual life or death fears, which most of them aren't. But, for example, if there is a wild animal running from you, then you actually know that that's something to go into survival mode with. But most of our fears actually aren't truth. They're just perceptions and they are just stories that are keeping you in the same space. So even this story of people will judge me. No one's judging you. It's just that you're judging yourself in that moment. There's some form of fear that people will judge you or that people will think something that you're saying is silly or stupid. But that's only because there's a part of you that thinks it's silly or stupid. And so we then put it outwards and think that it's because they see that. No, it's just people talking and it won't matter to you because you know what you believe and what you share is important and it has helped you. And like what they say is none of your business. It doesn't even matter. So we need to know what is truth, what is an illusionary story. And as well, highest expression is psychic capabilities, being able to pick up signals from divine intelligence and from others. So we want to be coming back to where are we shying away from what is true for us or pursuing things out of fear and out of insecurity or being frozen in analysis paralysis or not knowing when to let go or not knowing when to move forward. That is the lower expression of the undefined spleen. And what you need to know is that you have a choice to trust the inner niggling, to trust your intuition, because that is drawing you forward. And that's your truest, highest expression of your spleen center. That's your bottom left triangle. Then we're going to go up into the heart. The heart is at the center. It's another triangle at the center of your chart, to the little bit to the right. Your heart center, true sense is this knowing in your inherent worth, your inherent value, your empowered self, your empowered lens, your strong sense of self-esteem, and knowing that you are worthy of love and success, not from a place that you have to prove it. Proving it is actually in the not self. So even this idea of, you see it all on social media, of this is how you get confident and this is how you influence people. I would argue that that's from a lower self expression of this. True self has got nothing to prove. True self has got nothing to make sure everyone gets it or make sure that everyone gets you. The higher self is at peace with themselves. It recognizes their worth and value without feeling the need to compete or compare or to prove something. The higher self is non-judgmental of others and non-judgmental of oneself. And they also have strong motivation and willpower. That doesn't mean that you always have to be on. That doesn't mean you always have to be consistent. That doesn't mean that you have to self-sacrifice or overwork or become a workaholic. No. But you're in your life force, which is motivating, and you have willpower, and you are truthful to yourself, and you're honest with yourself, and you get out of your own shit when you're being, I guess, stuck in your stories, or when you're, like being lazy. I think sometimes I want to share this is that, yes, you can be honoring yourself and resting and everything like that, and resting and time for yourself and space, because that is important for your mission. It's not just self-serving. It's for your bigger mission. You rest so that you can show up bigger in your contribution here. And so when you just have no motivation and willpower, I would argue that you're in your not self and you're not letting yourself be in your true energy of creation, of manifestation, of passion. So, if you're in your not self of your heart is when you're constantly seeking worth from others or possessions or titles or jobs, or you're feeling the need to prove yourself or be in control, or being really competitive or comparing yourself with other people. Another not self of the lower expression is undervaluing yourself, charging too little, accepting low standards, over delivering, feeling like you have to convince others of your value. Or you might be performative, over explaining, forcing yourself to always be on, doing things out of obligation or to prove yourself rather than to follow intuitive guidance. Proving yourself's a big one with the heart, especially if you have it undefined. But I believe even if you have it defined, you can still be very conditioned there, because our world is very much constantly feeding to us that we're not enough and that you need to do other things to be enough. So the true self energy knows that that was never up for debate. You don't need to prove that you're worthy, but it was never up to debate. And so you won't accept or take little breadcrumbs that are less than that. And so again, picture your higher self energy. How would she operate? She wouldn't be undercharging. She wouldn't be overgiving. She wouldn't be hard or negative to herself. She wouldn't be judgmental to herself. She would see her value, not in a way that she needs to prove or make anyone else proud. She just is. And so we can use the power practice whenever you have any stories or thoughts that say you're not enough, or you're falling behind, or everyone else is doing more than you, or people are better than you. Okay, pause. What an opportunity. Witness the part of you that believes that. Witness your heart conditioning that doesn't believe in its worth in this moment or feels like it has to shrink itself. Pause. Okay, coming back to my true self, coming back to my high self. I am enough. I am life force divine energy. I don't have anything to prove. I can just trust my intuition and do the thing that I love and know that that is my highest path, and know that it will bring me all that I desire, and know that that is my equilibrium point. That is my true self energy. I don't need to prove myself. I don't need to continue. And like any type of action that comes from doing that, like any type of action that comes from, oh, I'm adding this in so people love me, especially if you're in business. Okay, notice if any part of your offering, if you're like, oh, I'll put that offering in because then people will like me better or they'll want to be part of my space. No, add value to your offering because it's genuine life force overflow, rather than trying to convince people that you're enough or that your offering's enough, because it will be felt by the other. Okay, to finish up with the energy centers, I'm just going to speak about the G identity center and also the ajna, because I see that these ones are the ones that the not self voice trips us up the most. The conditioning is the strongest. And then in future ones, I'll dive into other aspects of the chart. So by far the biggest one that contributes to the conditioned voice is the ajna, is this not self of needing to prove with logic, needing to know the 30 steps ahead before you make the first step, being so uncomfortable in uncertainty, feeling so uncomfortable in not knowing, that what happens, you end up just staying in your conditioned thinking and you end up trying to figure everything out from the mind. And as we know, the mind is full of conditioning, is full of these stories, is full of these illusions. And so this can be as well if people feel really mentally scattered and confused all the time and obsessed with certainty, but not the certainty that we want and the trust in all that is happening is for our highest good, but certainty and needing to know how it all pans out before you take this first step, which basically would defeat the whole purpose of being here. You're not meant to know. That defeats the whole purpose of free will. You would have no free will then. So it's this pressure to figure things out and it just creates suffering. And it's not where your answers are. You're not here to figure out life. You're here to trust where your life force and your intuition is guiding you and seeing, show me how good it can get. I know if you have to figure things out from your mind right now, you're not even tapping into higher frequencies. You're not even tapping into higher timelines or higher possibilities because it's coming from your mind right now. And that's based on your current timeline. And I don't know about you, but I hope to continue shifting and expanding and getting into higher timelines. So that's going to mean my logical mind can't even conceive what is possible yet. And so all I can do is trust where I'm intuitively feeling called rather than letting it or needing it to make logical sense. Now, I recorded a whole podcast on this, so I'll link it below about release the need or let it not make logical sense, because then you're opening up to all that is possible, to all that is possible. And that's coming into your highest self. That's coming into your highest, truest self who trusts in life, who knows and has that trust muscle in self that I can take this step forward, even if change is there. If we are afraid of change, you're going to live a small life. If you're afraid of change or afraid of discomfort, you're not even going to be able to see how beautiful life can be. So the not self avoids discomfort. The true self steps towards the discomfort, knowing that all good is on the other side. Okay, the last final center that I will speak about today, because look, she knows how to chat. She knows when it's her passion and her expertise with human design, we definitely can chat. So the not self around this is feeling the pressure to have this one role, this one identity, or staying in the same place your entire life. This is very much the not self, very much thinking you got to kind of stay the same, especially as I said, when just even playing off what we were talking about with the Ajna Center of being afraid of being uncomfortable. Or another not self I see with the identity center is this pressure or this obsession of finding your one purpose. Let me just remind you that if you find your one purpose, you will perish. You will no longer be in a human experience, because if you get to your end purpose, you won't be here anymore. You've fulfilled this karmic cycle. You no longer are needed on this plane. You will pass over to the other side. So please don't rush to your last end purpose. Your purpose is always evolving, is always developing. And I had this moment on my walk earlier of just so enjoying the expansion and the growth and knowing that I'm not even near where I want to get to. I truly don't want the end goal to happen right now, because then what else am I going to do for the rest of my life? Excuse me? I'm 33. What am I going to do for the rest of my life if I get to my end purpose right now? They say this, it's like actually the worst for people that are maybe Olympians or like actresses and actors. When you win the Olympic gold, you kind of retire then, or you get the Oscar and that's kind of it for your career. There's nothing to achieve or aspire for. People become depressed. Humans, we need a sense of evolving a purpose. And that's when they get the invitation to then find a new iteration of their purpose. But this is what we want to remind ourselves, is that we are always evolving. Our purpose is therefore always evolving. It's not one non-moving, stagnant space or place that you just somehow get to. We're not rushing to some end destination. If you're rushing to an end destination, you're rushing to the end of your life. It's a constant unfolding. And who do I get to be in all of it? What do I get to create in all of it? This is your highest self-expression, knowing that there's no end goal, knowing that there's not an end race that you're obsessed and trying to rush towards. Also, as well, your not self of the identity center is taking on other people's identity, going down other people's path because it feels safer, or feeling this pressure to determine who you are. That's some identity or role or in relation to others, following someone else's path or purpose. No, your true self energy is infinite, abundant, loving life force who is flexible, who is adaptable, who is compassionate, who is always evolving, who can wear many different hats and play various roles throughout your lifetime, and none of it defines you. Because if you define yourself as an external thing, then if that thing is ever taken away, even a relationship or even as mother or parent, then your sense of self is flimsy. So you have your monopole, your strong sense of self, and that can't be defined by a label or anything that is fleeting or anything that is finite. You are an infinite energy source, and move in your aligned, intuitive direction that you won't be able to see the 50 steps ahead. You can only see the next step. And you have your aligned direction that's going to involve so much uncertainty and so much unfamiliarity and so much discomfort. And you can also tell when environments are harmful for you and you no longer stay in unhealthy identities or unhealthy places that don't support you. So coming back to your higher self energy in every moment, you're constantly getting the opportunity to come back, come back. What would my higher self do? That's a really easy way. And that's part of my power practice that I shared last week. What would my higher self do? Embody my strategy and authority, my intuitive knowing, my body's expansion. What is the most expansive feeling and thought and action for it? And totally feel the frequency of that, feel the energy of that, and move forward. What an opportunity. What a pleasure to be given that opportunity right now. What an exciting experience to be able to shift a timeline to notice, just notice when you're in your not self of any of these centers that I've just spoken about. And notice when you have the invitation to come back to your highest expression and your highest self. That's the evolution. That's the transformation. That's when you connect and attract what is meant for you, because in that higher energy, you have a higher experience. So play in that, my loves. What an exciting time to be alive, and you have everything that you need right now. Let this awareness sit. If you want to dive deeper, join the certification. Like that was me trying to, gosh, I feel like I need to go take a breather after that. I don't think I took a breath for, let's actually do that. My higher self would take a breath right now. Even right now, I can witness the part of me that wants to give even more value, give even more value, give even more value. But I'm trusting that in a 1 hour podcast, I've definitely gone over right now. Your vessel can only receive so much. And if you are desiring to receive more and you want to get to know yourself better, have this awareness that will truly transform your life and the lives around you, and you would like to become an advanced practitioner in human design, please join us inside the certification. Right now, the doors are open. I'd love to have you, and I'm bloody excited. I'm ready. I'm ready to hold this space for you, to co-create with you, to guide you forward, and for you to operate and live in your highest self energy, for you to connect to the timelines that are for you, that are just waiting for you to step into, all by embodying your truest, highest signature self right now. Thank you so much for listening, my loves. Thank you for receiving this transmission. Thank you for being here. Thank you for showing up for yourself. What an absolute gift. What an absolute honor. I feel so devoted to this work and to you. I love you so much. Thank you for listening, and I will see you next week. Bye for now.